a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Right now, I have the privilege of talking to Jonathan Doyle. Now, Jonathan's background is in education. He has a number of degrees, so I'm not going to go through them all, but he's also completed postgraduate work in marriage and family studies. He's an author, executive coach, he's a consultant, and he has actually spoken around the world in seminars and live events to over 500,000 people. Jonathan's married to Karen, who is his partner in life and also in Choicez Media. And together they deliver content to thousands of people around the world daily through podcasts and videos. So Jonathan, I'm sorry for the confusion of getting you on this morning, but we're so grateful that you're here. It's a privilege to have you on the program. Thanks for joining us.
Wendy, it's an absolute joy and really looking forward to the conversation and hope it's going to be a blessing to people.
I'm confident that it will be. I'm a very proud grandmother. And I actually love attending my grandchildren's recitals. I attend their debates, their presentations, their fetes, their swimming lessons, you name it. If I can be there, I am. So I'm really grateful to be involved in their lives. But in being involved in their lives, it is becoming very clear to me that our nation's young people are facing what I would call a much more complex world than my own children did. Our listeners today have, all of them have a reason to glean wisdom from you this morning, Jonathan, because we all either have children, grandchildren, or we have students, or we have neighbours. The children we come in contact with, whether they are family or not, every one of them is precious to God. At the recent funeral of Charlie Kirk, one of the things that his widow Erica said, she said this: Charlie passionately wanted to reach and save the lost boys of the West. Charlie wanted to help them. Charlie wanted to save young men just like the one who took his life. So intuitively, as I've just said, we all know that our boys are struggling, our girls as well, to be honest, but you work in this area. So my first question is, what is Erica referring to when she says the lost boys of the West? What are we looking at? What are the problems that our boys are facing? Jonathan, can you help us?
Absolutely. I think it's dramatic to say it, but it's an historically unprecedented moment because we literally don't have a precedent for the sheer scale of the forces that are impacting and shaping young boys in general. I think for a large amount of human history, the expectations on young boys and young men in general are pretty straightforward. You would work, you would provide some role in defence, you would build a family of your own, and things kind of sort of moved along that general path for millennia in different forms. And I'm sure they had slightly different expressions in different cultures, but young men in general sort of knew what was expected of them in culture. And we've emerged in a moment for sort of complex technological, economic and historical factors where it's a really confusing and challenging time for young men. The technological piece is huge. You can go back, I guess, sort of as recently as about the 1860s and you look at the impact of the Industrial Revolution that really severed the link between boys and fathers, boys and their local communities, boys and their villages. And, we find ourselves in a moment in the 21st century where the technological factors are huge, amongst those most obviously pornography, addictive gaming, but also just disillusion, sort of just the amount of sheer time wasting and boys being sort of absorbed into almost a parallel dimension where they can waste large amounts of their time doing things that are relatively unproductive. And linked to that, I guess, is the idea at the philosophical level. My second master's program is in philosophical anthropology, which is basically looking at the kind of big picture philosophical roots of what it means to be human. And part of our understanding, at least in the Western tradition, is that male energy is essentially generative. It's outward focused. It has to have an aim, a target, a purpose. So there's obviously a sexual component to that, but there's also a physical, psychological element to that. So you take away the opportunity for young boys to be productive, to do productive things. That energy doesn't simply disappear. It sort of becomes malformed and goes into really socially unproductive areas. So that's just a few of the happy high points, Wendy, of what young boys are facing.
Yeah.
I've got a teenage son, so it's obviously something that's very close to my own heart as well.
Yeah, so I've got 2 teenage grandsons, and I know how easy it is for me to waste time, Jonathan. And I'm a big girl, I'm one of the adults in the room, and I know how easy it is for me to waste time, and how discouraging it is in my own heart when I have wasted that time. I find I'm disappointed in myself, to be honest, and so I can only imagine what it's like for young kids who don't have perhaps the discipline or parameters, boundaries that I have now in my life as I've got older. But for the sake of parents and teachers listening, I wanted to talk about the resources that Choicez offers, particularly in these complex areas of sex, identity. People talk about identity all the time now, and obviously the online world is really huge. My son was in grade 12 before we got our first computer, and we're not talking that long ago. And so it's just been this explosion of the online world. So there's 2 areas here I think that our listeners would be interested in. Firstly, for parents, but also then what you're offering for schools, because we're at a stage in Australian curriculum. Our government has mandated consent education for all students from kindergarten to grade 10. So that includes all of our students. So what a Christian parent is wanting is to have, a wholesome input for that consent education, not just something that has come out of a woke agenda, for want of a better word. So we're looking at parents and then also in education. What does Choicez have?
Yeah, great question, Wendy. Look, but the first thing I just want to say, relevant to what you started with just then, was for all the parents and educators out there that are really aware of these challenges in the technological space. I just want to validate how exhausting it is for parents and educators, because, we have 3 teenagers and we've been super vigilant from day one. But what I notice is that it's actually quite exhausting for parents that really want to do the right thing, because you are constantly dealing with the ways that the technologies into your home, into your kids' lives. No matter what you try to do, you're going to hear sort of, they have to use this for homework, or they've got to have this device, or they've got to do this. Most of their communication with their peers, of course, is digital. So I just want to validate that first and say to parents, if you find this really hard, the reason it's really hard is because it's really hard. It's just this constant. So we need to recognise that first. In terms of the resources, yeah, great point. Some of your leaders would be aware that I guess the basis of a large part of our education system has some pretty strong Marxist roots. If you go back to the 1930s, and you have political philosophers like Gramsci, who talk about this idea called the long march through the institutions, and the idea was that rather than staging some kind of dramatic, massive revolution where the average population would say, "Hey, hang on, we don't want a violent revolution, we don't want this to happen," they realised that what they needed to do was just gradually knock off the institutions over time. So they started with, I guess, high academia, tertiary education, and began to change how we thought about a lot of critical questions. And so now we have an education system that, it's based in some of that kind of, political philosophy. So what we've done, which has taken years of work for us, I mean, we've been doing this now for 23 years, but this particular response to the government's consent education mandates is we've built a massive kindergarten to year 12 enterprise-level platform that is a Christian response to consent and respectful relationships education. It's been a vast project, hundreds of videos, thousands of pages of content, which is now about to go into hundreds and hundreds of schools across Australia, which we're very excited about. But without boring parents with, vast amounts of detail, what they can know is that it's based in a deeply Christian worldview that recognises the value and dignity of every person made in the image and likeness of God. It encourages an attitude towards each other based in genuine love and charity. So it's been hard to do it, but we're incredibly proud of the result. So that's the first big project.
Yeah, Jonathan, are your resources just going into faith-based schools, or are they available for state schools as well?
No, at this stage we don't deal with the state sector for sort of obvious reasons. I think we made a decision from day one that we wanted to be true to the mandate that we felt we had, which was to provide and support Christian education and Christian families. So no, that's a bridge that we haven't crossed, and so.
So parents of kids who are going to state schools, what encouragement can you give them, and are there resources on your website that they can actually go to try and sort of combat some of the stuff that they might be hearing at school?
Yeah, correct. We're just about to launch a huge parent portal. So, for us, the Christian perspective of education is that the parents are the primary educators of their own children, and the state or even Christian education offers a supportive role to the primary role of parents. So everything we've ever built has always tried to recognise, encourage and support the crucial role of parents. I know many parents may not feel this some days, but they are the undisputed experts in their own child. We don't borrow our children from the state. The children and the relationships between parents and children, they pre-exist the state. And so nobody can be a better expert in their own child than a parent. So first is we encourage parents to just have some confidence again and say, yeah, this is hard. We didn't ask to be particularly cast into this moment in history, but there's still a great deal we can do. And I guess it involves the sacrifice of building deliberate, consistent, constant relationship with your own child, and modelling the kind of virtues and practices, at least in the digital space, for one example, that your kids will see. I use a device called Brick. I'll just give them a free plug because it's a new technology where you get a little device. It's about the size of a matchbox. You put it somewhere in your house. It's got a magnetic thing on the back. You put it somewhere just slightly inconvenient, not massively inconvenient. You put the app on your phone and you tweak the settings. And every time you touch your phone to that brick, it shuts off every single thing on your phone that you don't want to use or have pinging at you. And to get it to work again, you've got to go back to the brick. It's a very small psychological step, but I just find that I just use that and I have nothing but a phone available, like the literal telephone aspect and messaging, and that's it.
Wow.
So I've taught that with the kids, and Karen and I obviously do our best to really model just good digital practices, and then doing other stuff with them, like getting them physically active, making sure they've got busy, active lives. And again, to stress the point, there's plenty of times as parents when we just prefer to sit down and have a break, but you get a short window, right? You get this window from sort of birth to maybe late teens, early 20s, and then to get them sorted out. And we're right in the thick of it with so many parents listening. We're in the thick of it with 3 teenagers, so I understand how challenging it can be.
Everything you said has been really encouraging, Jonathan. I'm really grateful to you for coming on. If the listeners are wanting to find more, you go to Choicez Media. So Google that, but it's Choicez with a Z on the end. So CHOICEZ Media, Choicez Media. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. Please pass on my regards to your wife, Karen, as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Really appreciate the opportunity.
God bless.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.